The traffic light went dark for 3 hours in downtown Miami. Then we realized it wasn't just a power outage. Emergency dispatch was flooded with calls. But here's the terrifying part. Half their backup systems had already failed before the disaster even hit. Right now, across America, 10 major cities are hanging by a thread. One earthquake, one hurricane, one cyber attack, and millions of Americans could find themselves trapped in a complete infrastructure meltdown. I'm talking about cities where the hospitals have no backup power, where the water treatment plants are running on equipment from the 1970s, where one bridge failure could cut off food supplies to entire neighborhoods. And number one on this list, it's probably not the city you're thinking of. Before we reveal which American city is closest to complete collapse, let me show you just how bad things have gotten in the other 9. Starting at number 10. New Orleans, Louisiana. Population 383,000 people, living in what experts call a bowl waiting to fill with water. Here's what keeps emergency planners awake at night. The levee system protecting New Orleans has a 1 in 100 chance of catastrophic failure every single year. That's not a typo, 1% annual chance of complete devastation. But here's the part that should terrify you. The city's drainage system can only handle 1 inch of rain per hour. Hurricane Ida dumped 4 inches in a single hour. Walk through the lower 9th Ward today and you'll see houses still marked with spray paint from Katrina because they never got rebuilt. The Superdome, their main evacuation center, it can only hold 30,000 people. The city has 383,000 residents. You do the math. Number 9. Stockton, California. This city of 310,000 people has already filed for bankruptcy once, and they're headed straight back into financial collapse. Here's the crisis nobody's talking about. Stockton sits on some of the most earthquake-prone land in America, but their emergency response budget was cut by 60% during their bankruptcy. They have exactly 280 police officers for over 300,000 people. When the San Andreas fault finally snaps, and experts say it's not if but when, Stockton won't have enough first responders to handle a neighborhood barbecue, let alone a major disaster. Their fire department, running on equipment so old that parts have to be custom manufactured because the original companies went out of business decades ago. But stick around, because the city at number 3 makes Stockton look like Switzerland. Number 8. Detroit, Michigan. You think you know Detroit's problems? You don't know the half of it. This city has lost 63% of its population since 1950. But here's the nightmare scenario. They're still running water and power infrastructure designed for 1.8 million people, with only 670,000 people left to pay for it. The Detroit Water and Sewerage Department serves 4 million people across southeast Michigan. When their main pumping stations fail, and 3 of them are over 100 years old, it's not just Detroit that goes dark. It's Flint, Warren, Dearborn. An entire metropolitan area of 4.3 million people depends on infrastructure that city engineers describe as held together with duct tape and prayers. Last winter, when temperatures hit -20 degrees, over 200 water mains burst in a single week. That's in normal winter conditions. Imagine what happens when a real crisis hits. Number 7. Fresno, California. Population 542,000 people, sitting on top of America's most dangerous hidden time bomb. Fresno sits in the Central Valley, where decades of agricultural pumping have caused the ground to literally sink. We're talking about 28 feet of land subsidence in some areas. The city is sinking into the earth, and it's accelerating. Here's the disaster scenario that keeps FEMA up at night. Fresno gets hit with a 7.0 earthquake, not unlikely given they're 150 miles from the San Andreas fault. The sinking ground has already compromised the structural integrity of thousands of buildings. Emergency management officials estimate that up to 40% of the city's structures would be uninhabitable after a major quake. But here's the kicker. Fresno's emergency shelter capacity can handle 12,000 people. In a major earthquake scenario, they're looking at over 200,000 displaced residents. Number 6. Jacksonville, Florida. With 950,000 people, it's the most populous city in the continental United States by land area, and that massive size is exactly why it's doomed. Jacksonville covers 747 square miles. That's larger than Los Angeles, New York City, and Chicago combined. When Hurricane Ian hit Florida in 2022, it took emergency responders in some areas over 8 hours just to reach affected neighborhoods because of the sheer distances involved. Here's the scenario that emergency planners call the big one. A Category 4 hurricane makes direct landfall on Jacksonville. The city has exactly 47 emergency shelters for nearly 1 million people spread across an area the size of a small state. Their evacuation plan calls for residents to drive inland on I-10 and I-95. But here's what they don't tell you. Both highways cross the St. Johns River on bridges that are rated as structurally deficient by the Federal Highway Administration. If this information is opening your eyes to just how vulnerable America's cities really are, hit that subscribe button, because Nations in Depth is the only channel giving you the hard truths about America's infrastructure crisis that mainstream media won't touch. Here's how it happens. A Category 4 hurricane makes direct landfall on Miami Beach. Storm surge floods downtown Miami with 12 feet of water. The city's main power substations, which sit at sea level, are completely underwater. No power means no water pumps. No water pumps means no fresh water and no sewage treatment. Within 48 hours, you have 2.7 million people in Miami-Dade County with no electricity, no clean water, and no way to dispose of waste. The city's emergency shelters can handle 60,000 people. 2.7 million people live in Miami-Dade County. Miami International Airport floods. No flights in or out. I-95, the main evacuation route, becomes impassable due to flooding and bridge failures. Here's where it gets truly catastrophic. Miami has a 3-day supply of food in its grocery stores under normal conditions. After a major hurricane, with no power for refrigeration and no way to truck in supplies, the city runs out of food in less than 72 hours. Now you have millions of people with no food, no water, no power, no communication, and no way to leave. Emergency management officials have a term for this scenario: civilizational collapse. The American Society of Civil Engineers gives America's infrastructure a grade of C-. That's not needs improvement, that's dangerous failure, imminent. We've shown you 10 cities, but here's the truth that nobody wants to face. There are dozens more cities just as vulnerable. The difference between the cities on this list and the ones that didn't make it? These cities face multiple catastrophic threats simultaneously. A hurricane doesn't just bring wind and rain. It brings power outages that trigger water system failures, that cause sewage overflows, that lead to disease outbreaks, that overwhelm hospitals that can't function without power. It's not just one disaster, it's cascading system failures that turn a manageable crisis into the complete breakdown of modern civilization.